Chapter 321. Jiahui raised his hand and recalled the lone skeletal ghost. He then took out a hand drum. The drum body was pale white, made from a skull, and the drum skin was thin and black, made from human skin. He held the drum in one hand and lightly tapped it with the other. Boom! A deep, distant drum sound echoed. Just as the red fire lizard was about to spray lava again, it suddenly froze in place. Afterward, it seemed to have seen something terrifying, its eyes revealing a human-like fear. It hurriedly flailed its limbs and swished its tail, diving deep into the lava. Seeing this, Jiahui sneered. Against such a low-intelligence beast, mental attacks are indeed effective immediately. While Jiahui was entangled with the red fire lizard, Feng Qi took the opportunity to gather the fire linwood. In each of his hands, he shot out a fire chain. The fire chains quickly extended and wrapped around two mature fire linwood trees. Like a spirit snake capturing its prey, the fire chains tightly coiled around the fire linwood. Flames burned fiercely on the chains, yet they did not harm the fire linwood in the slightest. Feng Qi exerted all his strength, pulling hard on the fire chains. The two fire linwood trees were uprooted. Dragged by the fire chains, they landed in Feng Qi's hands. At that moment, Jiahui had just forced back the red fire lizard. He happened to see Feng Qi holding the two fire linwood trees. Feng benefactor. We had just agreed to work together to obtain the fire linwood, each getting one afterward. You wouldn't go back on your word, would you? As he spoke, an ominous aura emerged from Jiahui, who had a compassionate expression. The beads in his hand were constantly being manipulated, and a thick ghostly energy was emanating from them. Intense killing intent and sinister energy surged toward Feng Qi. Jie and Jiawu, exuding a strong Buddhist aura, gradually approached while fending off the surrounding molten flame fish. Feng Qi frowned, his expression shifting. In the end, he raised his hand and threw one of the fire linwood trees to Jiahui. After weighing it carefully and confirming that the other party was stronger, Feng Qi suppressed his greed and honored their agreement. Feng Qi waved to the distant Lang Tianlu and the masked man. Then he transformed into a red blur, turning to flee through the tunnel where Lei Yuhua had left. Seeing this, Lang Tianlu and the masked man also soared into the air, chasing after Feng Qi. Jiahui received the tossed fire linwood and watched as Feng Qi and the others left, preparing to stop them. At this moment, Jie and Jie Wu approached. Jiahui, are we just going to let him easily take away a fire linwood? Jie said, somewhat unwilling. Jiahui replied, this person's fire-based techniques are superb in this lava cavern. His fire-based techniques have received a significant boost. It's not wise to clash with him here. Moreover, Jiahui shifted his tone and continued, our acquisition of the fire linwood is entrusted to us by Master Huiming. Now that we have obtained one, we've completed the task. There's no need to cause unnecessary trouble over something that is of no use to us. We should hurry to the 10,000-year spirit liquid hall and seize the 10,000-year spirit liquid. TL. Huiming, previously translated as Monk Wayman in Chapter 313, after speaking, he beckoned Jie Wu and Jie Se to follow Feng Qi and the others, disappearing into the lava cavern. Having hidden in the shadows for a while without gaining anything, Songwen left the lava cavern. He gazed at the 20 or so still maturing fire linwood trees on the small island in the center of the cavern for a long time. In the end, Songwen did not gather them. Once the fire linwood leaves this place, it becomes extremely difficult to plant it and keep it alive. Of course, there are no absolutes. However, the effort and spirit stones required to transplant fire linwood far exceed its intrinsic value. This is also why Feng Qi and the others only took the mature fire linwood and ignored those that were still maturing. This can be considered a customary agreement among major righteous sects. The still maturing fire linwood has little use. Depleting resources for oneself is not beneficial, and it's better to leave it for future generations. Songwen used the thunder escape technique to traverse the lava cavern, continuing to follow behind Jiahui and the others toward the 10,000-year spirit liquid hall. The passage was complex and twisted, yet Jiahui showed no hesitation at every fork, appearing completely familiar with the underground tunnels. Following Jiahui and the others saved Songwen a considerable amount of time. Before long, a vast underground cavern appeared before Songwen. The cavern was several dozen meters wide, with cliffs surrounding its edges that descended into darkness. In the center of the cavern stood a tall stone mountain, rising dramatically, standing alone in the cavern. On top of the stone mountain was an imposing grand hall. The stone doors of the hall were wide open, revealing bright flames within. Through the firelight, one could vaguely see shadows moving inside the palace. Songwon leaped into the air, arriving outside the stone hall. Standing outside the door, Songwon felt an ancient, weathered aura rush toward him, mixed with an extremely pure spiritual energy. Songwon stepped into the grand hall. Inside the grand hall, aside from the pillars supporting the ceiling, there were no furnishings on the walls surrounding the hall. Several oil lamps were placed. These oil lamps burned brightly, illuminating the hall. With their light, surrounding the edges of the hall's floor were 10 stone mats, forming a perfect circle. The mats were spaced about a meter apart. In front of each mat sat a stone bowl. Both the stone mats and the stone bowls were firmly connected to the ground, making them difficult to move. Within the hall, there were nearly 10 cultivators. They either occupied a mat alone or cooperated to share one. Among them, many were individuals that Songwon recognized. Rong Jingjun sat on one mat, with her companion Hung Qing quietly standing behind her. Jie Hui and his companions occupied another mat. Lei Yuhua was also present, similarly occupying one mat. Mu Yunxin, whom Songwon had seen before at the Hehuan Spring Night Tower, also appeared here, occupying a mat by herself. The 6 cultivators who had previously robbed Songwon shared one mat. To Songwen's surprise, Ji Rushue was also here, sitting alone on a mat next to Mu Yunxin. The last time Songwen saw her, she was a mid-foundation cultivator. Now she had advanced to late foundation. Additionally, for late foundation cultivators from the Lei family shared a mat on the right side of Lei Yuhua. There was also a bearded man occupying a mat, whose attire indicated he was a disciple of the Profound Heaven Sword sect. He was a peak foundation cultivator. All 10 mats were occupied, leaving 2 vacant. Among the 19 people in the hall, the lowest cultivation level was late foundation. Moreover, except for Ji Rushua, only peak foundation cultivators occupied a mat alone. Late foundation cultivators shared a mat. Even if a mat was empty, they still took the liberty of occupying it. As Songwon entered the grand hall, he instantly attracted everyone's attention. This was due to one reason: Songwen's displayed cultivation level was only at mid-foundation. Chapter 322. Under the watchful gaze of the crowd, Songwen stepped forward and walked toward an empty mat. Seeing this, some people's faces showed mockery, as if they were laughing at Songwen's overestimation of himself. Others wore pensive expressions, their spiritual sense constantly scanning Songwon, seemingly trying to deduce if he was hiding his true strength and wanting to uncover his real cultivation level. A few were indifferent, glancing at Songwon a couple of times before losing interest. Wrong Jingyun looked surprised, as if taken aback that Wu Sheng, a mere mid-foundation cultivator, dared to covet the 10,000-year spirit liquid. She stared at Songwon, her lips slightly parted, as if she wanted to say something but ultimately fell silent. Rong Jingyun shook her head, turned away, and ceased to pay attention to Songwen. The Kanglin's secret realm opened once every 50 years. And each time it opened, it would produce a batch of 10,000-year spirit liquid. This grand hall was the place where the 10,000-year spirit liquid was gathered. On the 5th day after the secret realm opened, 10,000-year spirit liquid would condense in the stone bowls at noon. Occupying a stone mat essentially announced that the 10,000-year spirit liquid condensing in the stone bowl before that mat belonged to the person occupying it. The secret realm had already been open for more than 40 hours, and there was just over a day until the appearance of the 10,000-year spirit liquid. Cultivators with ambitions for the 10,000-year spirit liquid had basically all come to the grand hall. However, in the remaining day, more cultivators were bound to arrive. This is why late foundation cultivators would rather share a stone mat with someone else than occupy an empty one. They knew that even if they occupied it now, they wouldn't be able to hold it. It wasn't worth the trouble. For this reason, when these people saw Songwon, a mid-foundation cultivator, dare to occupy a stone mat alone, they showed expressions of mockery. In most people's eyes, this was almost akin to seeking death. They were all waiting to see what would happen to Songwon. What these onlookers didn't expect was that as more than 10 hours passed, with less than 3 hours remaining until the 10,000-year spirit liquid materialized, no other cultivators appeared. This made many unable to suppress their greed. eager to occupy the vacant stone mat and seize Song Wen's mat. At that moment, 3 figures rushed in, covered in dust. It was Feng Qi and his companions. Feng Qi noticed that there was still one mat available, and without a second thought, he dashed over and claimed it. His stone mat was directly adjacent to Song Wen's, just a short distance away. Feng Qi observed that the person on the neighboring stone mat was Song Wen, who was alone, and he couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. However, he didn't say anything further, merely casting a casual glance at Song Wen. Behind him, Lang Tianlu and the masked man noticed that Song Wen occupied a stone mat alone, and both showed unfriendly expressions. Lang Tianlu glared at Song Wen fiercely but didn't make any extreme moves. Instead, he moved to stand behind Feng Qi. The masked man's hatred was even more intense than Lang Tianlu's, and he headed straight towards Song Wen, a mere mid-foundation cultivator who gave you the courage to occupy a mat all by yourself, the masked man said to Song Wen. The commotion quickly drew the attention of everyone in the grand hall. The masked man asked a question that most cultivators inside wanted to know. Song Wen's face changed in surprise. Appearing fearful, he hurriedly leaped off the stone mat and distanced himself as if trying to avoid a calamity. I just saw this mat was empty, so I occupied it. If you want it, take it, he said. Song Wen's reaction left everyone in the hall stunned. Many among them had thought that Song Wen had some hidden trump card that could match a peak foundation cultivator or perhaps had a powerful backing. They didn't expect him to be merely looking for a chance to pick up a bargain. Moreover, Song Wen's performance was too cowardly, almost humiliating for a cultivator. The masked man merely asked a question, hadn't even taken any action. And yet Song Wen was already willing to hand over the stone mat. He had lost all dignity. Everyone's gaze toward Song Wen was filled with obvious contempt. The masked man looked at the now empty mat and was momentarily taken aback. However, he did not immediately occupy the stone mat. Instead, he fixed his gaze on Song Wen with an unwavering intent to kill. His eyes glared like blades, as if wishing to cut Song Wen into 1,000 pieces. Suddenly, he felt a powerful gust of wind sweeping toward him. The strong wind posed no threat and did not harm him in the slightest. The masked man turned his head and discovered that the strong wind came from Feng Qi. Feng Qi slightly shook his head at the masked man. It was a signal for him not to act recklessly. Reluctantly, the masked man retracted his killing intent. Then, with a swift movement, he sat down on a mat. The other cultivators in the grand hall shifted their attention from Song Wen to the masked man. Only he and Ji Rushue, both late foundation cultivators, occupied a stone mat alone. Choose the soft targets. In the grand hall, cultivators eager to compete for more 10,000-year spirit liquid naturally set their sights on Ji Rushue and the masked man. Many began to stir with anticipation, especially the 4 members of the Lei family who were sharing a mat and the 6 bandit cultivators. The 6 bandits comprised 4 men and 2 women. The 2 women were from the Hehuan sect. The 4 male cultivators were from the profound Heaven Sword sect, perhaps out of consideration for Ji Rushue being from the same sect or for other reasons. They didn't show any ill intentions toward her, instead eyeing the masked man with malice. Strangely enough, many were interested, but no one took real action. When Song Wen first occupied the mat, it was still early, so their choice to observe was reasonable at this moment. With less than 3 hours remaining until the 10,000-year spirit liquid would condense, still no one acted impulsively against the masked man. The reason was that, up to now, no battles had broken out in the grand hall. Everyone was unwilling to stick their necks out. Time flowed slowly in the oppressive and tense atmosphere. Before long, with less than half an hour remaining until the appearance of the 10,000-year spirit liquid, no one else had entered the grand hall during that time. This meant that cultivators with ambitions for the 10,000-year spirit liquid were essentially those already inside the grand hall. Other cultivators who had entered the secret realm either had little interest in the 10,000-year spirit liquid or knew they were not strong enough and didn't want to wade into the murky waters inside the grand hall. Those wanting to obtain more 10,000-year spirit liquid glanced back and forth at Ji Rushue and the masked man, their murderous intent growing stronger. One of the 6 bandits could no longer hold his composure. This person had dark skin and a stocky build. He looked less like a cultivator and more like a rural farmer. He was a disciple of the profound Heaven Sword sect and a sword cultivator. The farmer summoned a flying sword, and the sword was infused with a chilling sword intent. A sinister killing intent suddenly filled the entire grand hall. This killing intent rushed straight toward the masked man. "Hand over the stone mat, or die!" the farmer shouted harshly. The sudden turn of events immediately drew everyone's attention. Once again, the masked man became the focus of everyone's gaze. However, earlier, he had been the one threatening others. Now he was being threatened. The masked man's expression darkened. All of them were late Foundation cultivators. Where did this person find the confidence to act so arrogantly? The masked man stood up and patted his spirit beast pouch at his waist. A woo! A giant wolf over 10 feet long suddenly appeared before him. The giant wolf was muscular and robust, its limbs thick and powerful. As if forged from iron, its sharp fangs resembled deadly short blades. Its claws were razor-sharp, as if crafted from fine steel. This was clearly a late-stage second-tier spirit beast. Chapter 323. Looking at the imposing giant wolf, the male cultivator resembling a farmer displayed a look of disdain. "A mere beast dares to show off," he scoffed. He made a hand gesture for his sword technique. The flying sword pierced the air light as the wind. The sword energy surged like a rainbow. Ah! The giant wolf suddenly leaped, its claws like knives. Clang! The claws collided with the long sword. A shower of sparks erupted. The long sword lost control and flew far away. The giant wolf rolled through the air and landed clumsily on the ground. Its paws were scarred by the sword energy, deep enough to see bone, instantly staining the wolf's fur red. The farmer's lips curled into a smile with a flick of his fingers. He called back the flying sword, bringing it under his control again. The silver light flashed as he slashed at the giant wolf once more. The previous strike was merely a test. This strike was a full-force attack. The flying sword's momentum surged, cutting through the air like a rainbow. The masked man's expression tightened. The power of the flying sword was beyond what the giant wolf could withstand alone. He raised his hand and waved. A shield flew out to aid the giant wolf. However, the flying sword suddenly accelerated, reaching the giant wolf before the shield could arrive. Slashing toward it, a hint of fear appeared in the giant wolf's eyes, seeming somewhat intimidated, but the flying sword had already arrived, leaving it no choice but to confront it. The giant wolf stood up and continually struck out with its front paws. One fierce claw attack after another shot out like a tempest, rushing toward the flying sword. Clang, clang, clang. The claw strikes were unending, yet each one was shattered by the flying sword. The sword moved like a lone warrior cutting through an army, carving a bloody path through the throng. Finally, it slashed down onto one of the giant wolf's paws. Woo! A heart-wrenching howl escaped. Half of the giant wolf's left front paw was severed. The sword light cut into its abdomen, creating a wound over 2 feet long. It nearly disemboweled the creature. The giant wolf was sent flying by the immense force of the flying sword. The masked man watched his spirit beast with anguish and quickly fed the giant wolf several pills before putting it back into the spirit beast pouch. He also collected the severed half of the wolf's paw to prevent a sneak attack from the flying sword. He kept the shield firmly protecting him as he did all this. However, the incoming flying sword did not strike the shield, but was instead blocked by a short dagger. It was Lung Tianlu who had intervened. Seeing this, the farmer chuckled lightly. "You beast tamers can't win, so you just bring more people? But it seems you beast tamers don't have as many as we do." As if to confirm his words, just as he finished speaking, a man and a woman emerged from among the 6 bandits. The man also summoned a flying sword. A cold gleam flashed as it rushed directly toward the masked man. The woman produced a jade ruby, slowly sweeping through the air. Vibrant flower petals appeared out of thin air, accompanied by pink mist, surging toward the masked man. These two planned to first kill the masked man before turning their attention to Lang Tianlu. The masked man's expression grew serious as he fully activated the shield in front of him. Phantom shield images surged forth from the shield, continuously meeting the flying sword, attempting to weaken its power. The flying sword pierced through the layers of illusions and struck the shield. The masked man, along with the shield, was sent flying backward. Puffed! A mouthful of blood sprayed out, splattering into the air. The masked man landed clumsily, just managing to regain his footing at that moment. The pink mist arrived just in time. As the petals merged with his body, the masked man suddenly stiffened, his expression becoming somewhat dazed, facing the incoming flying sword once again. He seemed unaware of how to dodge or defend when the sword light was almost about to slice through his forehead. Perhaps driven by the instinct for survival, he abruptly regained his senses. He lowered his body sharply, and the shield flew up, blocking the flying sword. The flying sword struck the edge of the shield. Sword energy poured out, sweeping past the masked man's head, taking away large chunks of flesh and hair. The masked man's scalp and flesh were all torn away by the sword energy, revealing his bare skull. He looked like a terrifying demon, however. He had at least saved his life. Simultaneously, he and his shield were knocked to the ground by the tremendous force of the flying sword. Seeing the opponent's flying sword preparing to strike again, the masked man's face showed terror as he turned to look at Feng Qi. His eyes filled with pleading. Feng Qi sat calmly on the stone mat, raising his hand to unleash a fire dragon that blocked the flying sword aimed at the masked man. He cleared his throat and spoke loudly. "Forgive others when you can. My friends from the Profound Heaven Sword Sect and the He Huan Sect, could you spare this one face of mine and let him live? Take the stone mat if you wish." "Ha ha!" A voice of disdain echoed through the great hall. "You, Feng Qi, are so full of yourself. Since he dares to compete for the 10,000-year spirit liquid, he should be prepared to die." The piercing sound of mockery rang out. The speaker was none other than Ji Rushue, a mere late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Feng Qi's expression darkened upon hearing her words. It would be one thing for others to ridicule him, but how could a mere late-stage foundation establishment cultivator have the gall to provoke him? "If I remember correctly, your name is Ji Rushue, right? Back in East Huafeng Market Square, you were chased to the point of embarrassment by my subordinates. Without your master's help, you would have long been dead without a grave. You dare to bark here now." Ji Rushue responded indifferently. "Feng Qi, your subordinates bully their own kind, seizing the stone mat. If you can't even stand against my Profound Heaven Sword Sect disciples, then dying is simply self-inflicted. Let this be our Profound Heaven Sword Sect cleaning house for your Beastmaster sect." Feng Qi coldly replied, "Ji Rushue, it seems you are determined to be my enemy." Ji Rushue raised her eyebrows. "Do you think I would be afraid of you? If you want to die, then I'll make it happen," Feng Qi said. He raised his hand and summoned 2 enormous fire dragons. The temperature in the entire great hall suddenly soared. A strong killing intent spread through the air. "Feng Qi, if you bully my Profound Heaven Sword Sect, there will be no one to stop you." A rugged voice rang out. It was the burly man from the Profound Heaven Sword Sect with a thick beard. He fixed a cold stare at Feng Qi, eyes filled with fury. It seemed that if Feng Qi dared to attack Ji Rushue, he would face a thunderous counterstrike. Feng Qi turned to look at the bearded man, his expression icy. "I'd like to ask you to teach me about the sword techniques of the Profound Heaven Sword Sect." Suddenly, another charmingly seductive voice sounded. "Feng Qi, it seems you've forgotten my existence. I wonder, can you defeat me, senior brother Shuegu, and junior sister Ji all by yourself?" The speaker was Mu Yunxin, the bearded man, a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator of the Profound Heaven Sword Sect. Was the senior brother Shuegu that Mu Yunxin mentioned? Feng Qi had once been a guest in Mu Yunxin's quarters, however. Last time when Feng Qi captured Ji Rushue, he severely injured Mu Yunxin. From then on, the two became enemies and cut off all ties since then. Feng Qi was just a stranger to her. Her jade arms now rested on someone else's pillow. A red lip was tasted by another every night. She still sang the songs of the backyard flowers. Chapter 324. Mu Yunxin, this matter has nothing to do with you. Why do you have to meddle? Feng Qi said with a solemn expression. Mu Yunxin replied in a charming voice. Junior sister Ji and I share a bond like sisters. I have connections with senior brother Shui. The He Huan sect and the Profound Heaven Sword sect share mutual interests and will advance or retreat together. Feng Qi coldly retorted. Do you He Huan sect and profound heaven sword sect only dare to rely on your numbers? Mu Yunxin smiled seductively. Yes, we are relying on our numbers to bully your Beastmaster sect for being so few. What can you do about it? Feng Qi narrowed his eyes coldly, staring at Mu Yunxin for a long time before turning to Elder Rong Jingyu. Elder Rong, can you help me as a fellow sect member and join forces against the enemy? Rong Jingyun was also at the peak of Foundation establishment. If she were willing to team up against Mu Yunxin and the others, both sides would have 2 peak Foundation establishment cultivators, making their combat strength even. Rong Jingyun glanced at Feng Qi, her expression indifferent. Elder Feng, please do not involve the sect in your personal grudges. My partner and I just want a portion of the 10,000-year spirit liquid and have no intention of meddling in your conflicts. Rong Jingyun firmly rejected Feng Qi and also clarified her stance to Mu Yunxin and the others. Feng Qi said, Elder Rong, don't you think of the bonds between fellow sect members? Rong Jingjun laughed coldly, bonds between fellow sect members? When you were oppressing Elder Wu, you didn't consider that. Ha ha! Mu Yunxin suddenly burst into laughter. I didn't expect the imposing Feng Qi would also have a time when he needed to beg. Feng Qi, take your dog and roll out of the 10,000-year spirit liquid hall. Otherwise, this hall will be stained with blood. The 6 bandits, Xuegu, Mu Yunxin, Ji Ruxue, and a total of 9 people simultaneously unleashed their respective spirit weapons. In an instant, the atmosphere in the entire hall became unusually tense, killing intent boiled over, and the atmosphere dropped to freezing point. Feng Qi's face darkened like water. He never imagined things would develop to this point. The He Huan sect and the profound Heaven Sword sect actually united to force him to withdraw from the competition for the 10,000-year spirit liquid. Mu Yunxin, don't get too carried away. I've already agreed to give up 1 stone mat. Feng Qi made one last struggle. Mu Yunxin remained unmoved. Get lost. Or die. Feng Qi's face turned ashen, his teeth grinding together audibly, clearly infuriated to the extreme, but outmatched. He had no choice but to lower his head. He stood up from the stone mat and cast a fierce glance at Mu Yunxin and the others, his face filled with resentment. Damn it. Feng Qi shouted and flew out of the hall. Lang Tianlu and the injured masked man followed closely behind, exiting the great hall as well. The 3 quickly disappeared without a trace. Feng Qi intended to use the masked man to gain another portion of the 10,000-year spirit liquid, but ended up shooting himself in the foot, losing the portion he already had to the combined forces of the He Huan sect and the profound Heaven Sword sect. Among the 6 bandits, a man and a woman rushed towards the 2 vacant stone mats. Suddenly, 5 skeletal ghostly figures appeared beside Jie Hui, quickly rushing toward one of the empty stone mats. This stone mat had originally been occupied by Feng Qi, adjacent to the one occupied by Jie Hui. Due to the closer distance, the 5 skeletal ghostly figures reached it first, surrounding the stone mat. What do you bald donkeys from Mixed Yuan Temple mean by this? Ji Ruxue exclaimed angrily upon seeing the situation. Jie Hui, sitting cross-legged on the stone mat, slightly bent forward to bow respectfully, his face serene and compassionate. This lady. The poor monk naturally wishes to seize a share of the opportunity. Ji Ruxue retorted furiously, the stone mat was taken from Feng Qi by our profound Heaven Sword sect and He Huan sect. You bald donkeys were silent just now, but now you want to take advantage. Jie Hui spoke slowly and leisurely. The 10,000-year spirit liquid is originally a thing without an owner, so it naturally belongs to the virtuous. As a Buddhist cultivator from Mixed Yuan Temple, I save all living beings and possess great compassion and virtue. I should rightfully obtain more spirit liquid. Ji Ruxue cursed angrily. You bald donkey. You practice soul refinement and control ghosts. Where's your compassion? Jie Hui pressed her palms together and recited a Buddhist mantra, her expression devout. The Buddha says that all beings are equal and all things can become Buddhas, even ghosts can become Buddhas. The poor monk has never enslaved any ghost. I am guiding the ghosts. On the day I become a Buddha, those ghosts can ascend to paradise with me and be free from the suffering of reincarnation. This is the highest virtue and goodness. How can you, lady, speak so recklessly and blaspheme? Jie Hui wore a face of compassion and devotion as if what she said were true. Upon hearing this, Ji Ruxue did not get angry but instead laughed, unable to help herself. You bald donkeys are truly eloquent, according to your reasoning. Those evil cultivators of the ghost path are all virtuous people who should be sent to your Western paradise to become Buddhas and ancestors. Is it true that in your Buddhist teachings, the Supreme Buddha is nothing but a collection of the most sinister and evil beings? Faced with Ji Rushue's mockery, Jia Hui became furious. Ignorant woman, how dare you slander my Buddha? You seek death. The compassion on Jia Hui's face disappeared in an instant, replaced by a chilling killing intent. He lightly moved the prayer beads in her hand, and 5 skeletal ghostly figures abandoned the stone mat, wielding rusted long blades, charging toward Ji Rushue. These 5 skeletal ghosts were all at the late 2nd tier level. Each ghost's strength was comparable to Ji Rushue's late foundation establishment level. However, Ji Rushue showed no fear, just a bunch of ghosts daring to show off. As her words fell, 9 flying swords suddenly appeared. Ji Rushue exclaimed sharply, "Great Cave Divine Thunder." In an instant, lightning flickered above the 9 long swords. Everyone in the hall couldn't help but look over, especially Lei Yuhua and the other 5 from the Lei family. The Great Cave Divine Thunder is the second of the 9 great heavenly thunder secrets techniques from the Lei family, requiring foundation establishment level or higher to practice under the pressure of several major sects in the cultivation world. The Lei family had leaked the first 2 techniques of the 9 great heavenly thunder secrets techniques to several major sects. These sects found that only a few disciples could cultivate the divine thunder techniques to a high level, unable to unleash the true power of the techniques. Slowly, these sects lost interest in acquiring the 9 great heavenly thunder secrets techniques. As a result, rumors circulated in the cultivation world that only those with Lei blood could unleash the true might of the 9 great heavenly thunder secrets techniques. Thus, it was not surprising that Ji Rushue, as a member of the Profound Heaven Sword sect, practiced the Great Cave Divine Thunder. What was strange was that she dared to bring it out to face the enemy. Moreover, she was up against 5 opponents of similar strength. Songwen, who was standing in a corner of the hall and nearly forgotten by everyone, was also surprised. The Great Cave Divine Thunder that Ji Rushue unleashed actually formed from the 9 sword bodies. This was very different from how he had used it. When Songwen used the Great Cave Divine Thunder, it came down from the sky. Moreover, the records he obtained of the Divine Thunder techniques stated that the thunder should descend from the heavens. Could it be that a powerful person from the Profound Heaven Sword sect has improved the Divine Thunder techniques? Songwen thought to himself. Chapter 325. 9 flying swords, shimmering with lightning, circled around Ji Rushue, constantly spinning. Standing in the midst of the lightning, Ji Rushue seemed like a celestial maiden descending to the mortal realm, mysterious and captivating. She leaped into the air, bringing the 9 flying swords with her, actively charging toward the 5 ghostly figures. Due to being deep within the Kanglin's secret realm, her spiritual consciousness was suppressed, forcing Ji Rushue to get close to the ghosts and engage in close combat. Jia Hui was momentarily startled by Ji Rushue's lightning control. Before he could make any move, Ji Rushue had already closed in on the 5 ghosts. Ji Rushue formed a sword gesture with her left hand, drawing it forward. The 9 flying swords surged out in a line, but instead of harming the enemies, they circled around the perimeter, enclosing the 5 ghosts within. Evil extermination sword formation, rise. Ji Rushue shouted. As Ji Rushue continuously manipulated the sword techniques in her hands, a connection abruptly formed among the 9 flying swords. Countless mysterious laws flew out from the 9 flying swords. The laws formed from silver lightning quickly intertwined with one another. A gray-black translucent light curtain emerged, using the 9 flying swords as its base and the lightning laws as its barrier, suddenly materializing. It trapped the 5 ghostly figures inside. Jie Hui's expression became extremely grave. Ji Rushue had actually cultivated a sword formation, and it was a lightning law sword formation at that. However, fortunately, while the sword formation trapped the ghosts, it did not sever the connection between Jie Hui and the ghosts. In other words, the 5 ghosts were still under his control. Jie Hui slid his prayer beads, and the 5 ghostly figures, wielding long blades, all slashed toward a weak point in the sword formation's barrier. Seeing this, Ji Rushue revealed a cold smile. Just a bunch of ghosts thinking they can break my sword formation. It's wishful thinking. Thunder. Each of the 9 flying swords shot out a bolt of lightning, 9 streaks of thunder with the force of 1,000 pounds, carrying overwhelming celestial might, struck toward the 5 skeletal ghosts in a flash. The 5 skeletal ghosts merged into one. facing an uncertain direction, and their long blades slashed fiercely. The dazzling lightning instantly filled the entire sword formation, completely obscuring the figures of the 5 ghosts. When the lightning dissipated, the weak silhouettes of the 5 ghosts were revealed. The souls of the 5 ghosts had become much more transparent, as if they could disintegrate at any moment. The ghosts they had painstakingly refined were nearly shattered by Ji Rushue, leaving Jie Hui filled with hatred. He raised his hand to take out a human skin hand drum. With a gentle tap, a dull drumbeat sounded. Ji Rushue's figure swayed slightly, and a look of terror appeared on her face. A terrifyingly large beast materialized before her eyes. The beast stood several zhang tall. It had a humanoid form but with a bull's head. Its pair of eyes glowed red, exuding cruelty and bloodlust. Looking down from its height, it gazed at Ji Rushue, who was as small as an ant in the shadow of the giant beast. Ji Rushue felt as if she were falling into an abyss, deeply aware of her own weakness, unable to muster even a shred of fighting spirit. At that moment, she only wished to escape, to put as much distance between herself and the beast as possible. It felt as if her feet were filled with lead, unable to move even an inch. What terrified Ji Rushue even more was that the giant beast raised its right foot, slowly stepping toward her. Ji Rushue's vision was completely dominated by the enormous paw. She could even smell the pungent stench emanating from the beast's foot. Just as Ji Rushue thought she was about to die at the hands of the giant beast, a loud shout exploded in her ear. "Junior sister Ji, wake up." Ji Rushue suddenly came to her senses as if waking from a dream. She immediately realized she was in the Kanglin's secret realm, within the Hall of 10,000-year spirit liquid. She was in a fierce battle with Jie Hui inside the Great Hall. Where did this giant beast come from? This giant beast is an illusion. It is a mental attack targeting the soul. Having discerned the true nature of the beast, what had previously terrified Ji Rushue now appeared to her as nothing more than a facade. With her right hand, Ji Rushue formed a sword gesture and lightly pointed at the giant beast. A sword chi shot forth. In an instant, the giant beast shattered into countless tiny light particles, dissipating away. Ji Rushue felt a sudden clarity as everything before her became bright again. Everything she saw returned to normal. Looking up, she noticed that the evil extermination sword formation had collapsed due to her loss of control. The 5 ghosts had already been recalled by Jie Hui. The retrieval of the ghosts meant that the stone cushion occupied by the 5 ghosts was now empty. Ji Rushue's expression turned cold as she stared at Jie Hui, with 9 flying swords rapidly rotating around her, reflecting her lingering unease. Her forehead glistened with beads of sweat, cold sweat brought on by the giant beast. However, she had no intention of backing down. Though Jie Hui's human skin hand drum was strange, Ji Rushue had seen it once before and had her guard up, believing she wouldn't be easily tricked again. "Bald donkey, watch my sword." The 9 flying swords gathered lightning energy, ready to strike at Jie Hui. With an indifferent expression, Jie Hui said, "Lady, I have already relinquished the stone cushion. Why must you be so aggressive?" Though Jie Hui appeared to concede, Ji Rushue was unwilling to let it go so easily. The flying swords shot out in a line, sweeping toward Jie Hui. Jie Wu suddenly transformed into a golden giant, standing up and bellowing, "Filthy woman! Can't you understand my senior brother Jie Hui's words? Do you really think you can run rampant with a mere sword formation? Dare to unleash it, and I'll smash you to pieces. Junior sister Ji, do not cause unnecessary trouble. Come back." Mu Yunshin suddenly interjected, trying to mediate. "Humph!" Ji Rushue snorted coldly, reluctantly sheathed her flying swords, and turned to walk toward her stone cushion within the mixed Yuan temple. There were 3 peak foundation building cultivators present. Even if the He Huan sect and the profound Heaven Sword sect joined forces to confront them, the outcome could only be mutual destruction. This would only allow the others in the Great Hall to pick up the spoils. The vacant stone cushion was occupied by a disciple of the profound Heaven Sword sect. Jie Hui sat on his stone cushion, having failed to seize the cushion and suffering injuries because of the 5 ghosts. His expression was no longer as kind and benevolent as before. Instead, he appeared quite grim suddenly. He sensed someone watching him. Looking up and scanning the Great Hall, Jie Hui discovered that the one observing him was Shui Gu from the profound Heaven Sword sect. However, the other party was not just peeking. They were openly staring at him. A surge of anger suddenly rose in Jie Hui's heart. He had already accepted defeat, relinquishing the empty stone cushion. What else did the profound Heaven Sword sect want? Did they still want to seize his stone cushion? As Jiehui fumed internally, he noticed that Shuegu's gaze flickered toward Lei Yuan and the other 4 Lei family cultivators, a barely noticeable sneer appearing at the corner of his mouth. Jiehui's eyes fixed on Shuegu. Seemingly unsure of his intent, Shuegu nodded slightly. Then, he turned away, no longer looking at Jiehui. Seeing this, a smile emerged on Jiehui's face, and his expression returned to one of compassion. A little over a moment later, the vast spiritual energy of heaven and earth began to converge, sharply increasing the concentration of spiritual energy within the entire great hall. Everyone in the hall felt a strange illusion arise, as if they were situated within a gigantic spiritual vein. It felt like with every breath, they could inhale a large amount of spiritual energy, and their cultivation seemed to be quietly rising. All the participants' expressions brightened. The 10,000-year spirit liquid was about to condense into existence. Chapter 326. Inside the great hall, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth grew increasingly dense. The crowd felt invigorated, their gazes fixed tightly on the stone bowls in front of each of their stone cushions. At the same time, everyone released their spiritual awareness without reservation, alerting to all movements around them. Fearful of any sudden changes, many even summoned their own spiritual artifacts, just in case. In an instant, various spiritual artifacts emitted pressure, filling the entire hall with a strong and deadly intent. Suddenly, every stone bowl began to emanate a milky white glow. The milky white light gradually intensified, and the bowls shone so brightly that they were blinding. An extremely rich wave of spiritual energy radiated from the stone bowls. The white light enveloped the bowls and lasted for about half a stick of incense. Then, the white light gradually started to retract and dim. The 12 cultivators occupying the stone cushions were all visibly excited, yet somewhat tense. Once the white light completely dissipated, it would be time to collect the precious spirit liquid. Suspended in front of each of them was a jade vial, prepared to receive the spirit liquid. At that moment, an unexpected turn of events occurred. A figure with fiery red wings burst in from outside the hall. Its speed was astonishing, akin to a burning meteor. It was Huayu. Everyone's expressions grew serious, each person urging their spiritual artifacts, poised for action. What surprised the crowd was that Huayu did not attack cultivators from other sects. He instead charged at Rong Jingyun, who was also a disciple of the Beastmaster sect. Only her husband, Heng Cheng, accompanied Rong Jingyun. Within the great hall, she was the weakest and the easiest target to plunder. Seeing Huayu barreling toward her with overwhelming force, Rong Jingyun showed no fear. Huayu, you previously robbed Elder Wu's stone cushion and now you attempt to strike at me. TSK. As an elder of the law enforcement hall, do you only know how to bully your fellow sect members? Am I the only one who doesn't remember this, Huayu? As she spoke, Rong Jingyun opened her mouth and expelled a small square cauldron. The square cauldron rapidly inflated upon meeting the air, instantly growing to a size of 10 feet. A brilliant red light shone from atop the cauldron. The originally jet-black cauldron gradually began to glow red, quickly transforming into a bright crimson as if it were being seared by intense flames. A terrifying heat radiated from the square cauldron. Seeing this, Huayu, who was rapidly charging toward Rong Jingyun, widened his eyes in surprise. Clearly, he recognized the cauldron and understood its extraordinary nature, the Yen Guangding flame-light cauldron. Huayu's expression changed and he grasped the air above him. A large fiery blade formed from concentrated flames suddenly appeared in his hands. Huayu wielded the flaming blade and fiercely slashed at the square cauldron. Clang! The flaming blade collided with the square cauldron, producing a sharp, resonating sound. The two clashed and instantly separated, both retreated several feet. Huayu's expression turned grave. The legendary spirit artifact from the alchemy peak, the flame-light cauldron, had actually fallen into Rong Jingyun's hands. The flame-light cauldron was a cauldron for alchemy, but it also served as an offensive spiritual artifact. Deep within the alchemy peak of the Beastmaster sect, a heart of earth, Fire was sealed within, used for the thousands of alchemists who practiced alchemy on the peak. Within the flame cauldron, there is a trace of the earth fire from the depths of the earth when activated by spiritual power. The flame-light cauldron can unleash an endless stream of spiritual flames to scorch its enemies. Earlier, when Huiyu launched a surprise attack, Rong Jingyun was caught off guard and didn't have time to summon the spiritual flames. Huiyu was secretly alarmed. But he did not lessen his offensive. If he wanted to obtain the 10,000-year spirit liquid, he could only confront Rong Jingyun head-on. He hurriedly formed several hand seals and shouted, "Earth fire chains." As the hand seals were completed, the ground within 100 meters around the flame-light cauldron suddenly surged with a red light. 9 fiery chains burst from the ground, wrapping around the flame-light cauldron from 9 different directions. The flame-light cauldron could not evade and was tightly bound by the 9 fire chains. A faint blue flame emerged from the mouth of the cauldron, burning the 9 fire chains. Wherever the blue flames touched, the red flames on the chains were slowly devoured by the blue fire. As a result, the fire chains began to shrink. Huiyu knew that his spell could only restrain the flame-light cauldron for a moment. He conjured 2 fire dragons and sent them charging toward Rong Jingyun. Rong Jingyun opened her mouth and expelled a small yellow flag. The small flag flew into the air, hovering above Rong Jingyun's head, quickly expanding to several feet in size. The yellow light shone brightly, firmly protecting both Rong Jingyun and Hung Cheng. No matter how the 2 fire dragons exhaled flames, they could not break through the yellow light. Seeing that the 2 fire dragons could not threaten Rong Jingyun, Huiyu cast another spell and summoned 2 more fire dragons, for fire dragons each 10 feet long. Surrounded the yellow flag, Rong Jingyun began to sweat profusely, struggling to maintain her stone cushion, which made her uncomfortable. Her gaze was fixed intensely on the stone bowl. The white light on the stone bowl was about to fade completely. It was becoming increasingly clear that the stone bowl was filled with a milky white liquid. Behind her, Hung Cheng saw his wife being attacked by Huiyu, and a flame of anger surged in his eyes. He controlled a flying sword and continuously attacked Huiyu, but Huiyu had a fiery shield in front of him, easily blocking the attacks. No matter from which direction Hung Cheng launched his flying sword, it was easily deflected by the shield, unable to approach Huiyu at all. The fierce battle between Rong Jingyun and Huiyu seemed like a signal for attack. At the same time, 3 monks from the Mixed Yuan Temple, Ji Ruxue and Shui Gu from the Profound Heaven Sword Sect, Mu Yunxin from the Hehuan Sect, and 6 rogue cultivators from the Hehuan and Profound Heaven Sword sects all launched attacks against Lei Yuhua, and the 4 members of the Lei family. Jie Hui and his 2 companions targeted the 4 members of the Lei family. The others launched a sneak attack on Lei Yuhua. The 4 members of the Lei family, under the surprise attack from the 3 monks, were unable to withstand even a single strike and were instantly beheaded. On the other hand, Lei Yuhua managed to escape from the encirclement of 9 foundation building cultivators. He was able to evade the attacks of 9 people due to the exquisite nature of the thunder escape technique. Lei Yuhua's speed was nearly at the peak that a foundation building cultivator could achieve. Additionally, the secret realm exerted pressure on spiritual awareness. The controllable attack range of spiritual awareness was limited to 100 meters. Beyond that distance, one could not attack at will. As Lei Yuhua narrowly evaded the attacks, the white light on the stone bowl had already faded at this moment. Everyone could not care less about continuing to attack others and were all urging their jade vials to collect the 10,000-year spirit liquid from the stone bowls in front of them. Seizing this opportunity, Lei Yuhua rushed toward the stone cushion he originally occupied. There were still no other cultivators rushing to the vicinity of the stone cushion, relying on his speed advantage. He arrived ahead of others, took out his jade vial, and began to absorb the 10,000-year spirit liquid. At the same time that Lei Yuhua rushed toward the stone cushion, Songwon, who was positioned in the corner of the Great Hall and had almost been forgotten by everyone, also used the thunder escape technique, transforming into a bolt of lightning and darting toward a stone cushion. Songwen's speed was even faster than Lei Yuhua's. He arrived at the selected stone cushion ahead of Lei Yuhua. Chapter 327. The stone cushion that Songwen rushed toward was one he had carefully selected. This stone cushion was the closest to him and only guarded by a male cultivator from the Profound Heaven Sword sect and a female cultivator from the Hehuan sect. Both of them were at the late stage of foundation building. They were among the weakest defenses of all the stone cushions before Songwon arrived. A 3-meter-high treasure pagoda, radiating a mysterious yellow light, descended from the sky, crashing down toward the two. It was the top-grade defensive spirit tool, the profound earth treasure pagoda. The two were shocked by Songwon's speed but did not lose their composure. The male cultivator from the profound heaven sword sect activated his flying sword to confront the descending pagoda. The female cultivator from the Hehuan sect seized the opportunity to activate her jade vial and began collecting the 10,000-year spirit liquid. A cold gleam flashed, slashing toward the female cultivator. It was the cold moonblade. Although Songwon had a more powerful attacking spirit tool, the soul-cleaving blade, both the soul-cleaving blade and the profound earth treasure pagoda were top-grade spirit tools, and with Songwon's late-stage foundation-building cultivation, it was already a significant strain to activate the profound earth treasure pagoda. It was nearly impossible to activate two top-grade spirit tools simultaneously. The female cultivator summoned a red ribbon, easily blocking the cold moonblade. However, her action of collecting the 10,000-year spirit liquid was momentarily delayed. In that brief moment, Songwon had already approached the stone bowl and was controlling a jade vial from afar, beginning to absorb the 10,000-year spirit liquid. Ding! The male cultivator's flying sword struck the lower edge of the profound earth treasure pagoda. The flying sword was deflected away. The profound earth treasure pagoda slowed down slightly but continued to crash down toward the two. Realizing the pagoda's extraordinary nature, the male cultivator did not hesitate to retreat. Instead, the female cultivator, who was intent on collecting the 10,000-year spirit liquid, was directly struck by the pagoda and trapped inside. After the profound earth treasure pagoda trapped the enemy, it had its own means to eliminate foes, but at that moment, Songwon had no intention of splitting his focus to kill the female cultivator. He fully focused on activating the jade vial to absorb the 10,000-year spirit liquid. The 10,000-year spirit liquid contained pure spiritual energy, and the time it took to collect was significantly longer than Songwon had anticipated. It took him about 10 breaths, 20 seconds of time to completely gather the 10,000-year spirit liquid into the jade vial. At this time, apart from Lei Yuhua, everyone else had also gathered the 10,000-year spirit liquid into their jade vials. When these people saw Songwon suddenly charge in and seize a portion of the 10,000-year spirit liquid, they were all greatly shocked. The members of the Hehuan sect and the profound heaven sword sect were immediately enraged and urged their spirit tools to strike at Songwon. Songwon could not afford to concern himself with the female cultivator still trapped under the pagoda. He raised his hand and summoned the profound earth treasure pagoda, which flew into the air and hovered above his head. The pagoda emitted a mysterious yellow light, firmly protecting Songwon. In that instant, Songwon activated the thunder escape technique, transforming into a bolt of lightning and darting toward the exit of the Great Hall. Due to the suppression of spiritual awareness in the secret realm, the attacks of the others were difficult to execute freely. Relying on the thunder escape technique, Songwon evaded most of the attacks. He also withstood 2 attacks thanks to the power of the profound earth treasure pagoda breaking through the main entrance. With Songwon having taken the profound earth treasure pagoda, the female cultivator trapped inside was naturally freed. She stared at Songwon's retreating figure with lingering fear. Also watching Songwon leave was Lei Yuhua. The speed demonstrated by Songwon while using the thunder escape technique astonished him. Could there really be cultivators outside the Lei family who had trained the thunder escape technique to such a degree? Just how high was this person's lightning talent? As Songwon left, Lei Yuhua became the target of everyone's ire. After Songwon had escaped from the Great Hall, he had just managed to collect the 10,000-year spirit liquid. He could no longer afford to think about Songwon's lightning talent. Using the thunder escape technique, he darted toward the Great Hall's exit. Feng Qi was also escaping through the Great Hall's exit at the same time. The flame-light cauldron broke free from the restraints of the earth fire chains and spewed out a large amount of blue flames, scorching toward Feng Qi. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, Feng Qi decisively gave up on competing for the 10,000-year spirit liquid and chose to retreat. Rong Jingyun, filled with murderous intent, stared at Feng Qi's back and said to the person beside her, "Heng Cheng, let's go." Inside the Great Hall, the Profound Heaven Sword sect and the He Huan sect formed one power, while the Mixed Yuan Temple was another. These two factions possessed the strongest power, capable of crushing anyone else if she continued to stay here. She couldn't guarantee that no one would have ill intentions toward her. At this moment, the Great Hall was in extreme chaos, making it the best opportunity to escape. Shuigu and Mu Yunxin were pursuing Lei Yuhua. Ji Ruxue was surrounded by 9 flying swords, guarding against the 3 monks from the Mixed Yuan Temple alongside several disciples from the Profound Heaven Sword sect and the He Huan sect. Jie Hui ignored Ji Ruxue, instead watching Rong Jingyun and Hang Cheng's retreating figures with a peaceful smile. "Why are you two so anxious? I implore you to hand over the 10,000-year spirit liquid as an offering to our Buddha." Jie Wu transformed into a golden giant and stepped forward, charging toward Rong Jingyun and Hang Cheng. Jie Hui and Jie Se each stood on a lotus platform, also pursuing them. "You too. Your attachment is just greed, and greed is an evil thought. You have been invaded by evil spirits, so let this poor monk guide you to salvation." Rong Jingyun's speed was not slow, so she didn't have to worry about being caught by the 3. However, Hang Cheng's speed was slightly lacking. The distance between the 3 and Hang Cheng was rapidly closing. Rong Jingyun glanced back at Jie Hui, whose face was filled with benevolence, gritting her teeth and lightly shouting, "Go!" A surge of blue flames suddenly erupted from the flame-light cauldron, which had been protecting Rong Jingyun and Hang Cheng. The blue flames rapidly spread, blocking the path of the 3 monks. "Just a mere spirit flame." Jie Hui scoffed. However, he slowed down. Not daring to let the blue flames touch him, Jie Hui opened his mouth wide. A large amount of black, foul gas surged from his mouth. The foul gas was like the stench of a latrine, unpleasant to smell. It was also as if evil spirits had descended, filled with ominousness and disaster. And like the presence of Asuras in the world, it was filled with bloody violence and chaotic bloodlust. This was a foul gas, a mixture of corpse poison, ghostly energy, blood evil energy, and other impurities of the world. The earth core refining flame contained a trace of the righteous energy of heaven and earth, which could restrain evil entities. However, the large amount of foul gas surged toward the rootless earth core refining flame, making it seem a bit overwhelmed. Wherever the foul gas passed, the blue flames quickly extinguished. Once the blue flames were completely extinguished, Jie Hui inhaled deeply, like a whale swallowing. The nauseating foul gas was sucked back into Jie Hui's stomach, not knowing where it was stored within him. Jie Hui and the others continued to soar through the air, pursuing Rong Jingyun and Hang Cheng. As the chase continued, the 5 quickly flew out of the Rocky Mountain area. Hang Cheng turned back, looking at the 3 evil monks who were getting closer and closer, his eyes flashing with determination. Suddenly, his escape speed dropped sharply. A powerful wood-type spiritual force rose around him. Hang Cheng turned to face the pursuing trio, his expression calm as he focused on them. He continually formed hand seals, and the wood-type spiritual force rippling around him grew even more immense. Chapter 328. Rong Jingyun sensed something amiss and noticed her husband's unusual movements behind her. She quickly turned around, her expression anxious. "Darling, why are you doing this? It's dangerous here. Let's escape quickly." Hang Cheng looked back at his wife, his eyes filled with tenderness, yet his hand did not stop forming hand seals. "Jingyun, you know very well that the 2 of us cannot escape together. Rather than falling into the hands of those demonic monks, it's better for one of us to live and leave." As he spoke, a tall green figure suddenly appeared in front of Hang Cheng. It was a giant demonic vine, with dozens of tendrils. Each tendril was as thick as a human waist, covered in tiny scales that flickered with a faint green light. They twisted and writhed like a group of enraged giant snakes. With a fierce sound that broke the air, they lunged toward the 3 monks. In the moment of attack, Hang Cheng turned around and shouted at his wife, who had paused her escape, hesitating. "Go! You must survive and get out of this secret realm. Our son is still at home waiting for us. He will take care of you." Hang Cheng's tone was urgent, tinged with a sense of tragic loneliness. As he spoke, dozens of tendrils like furious giant pythons lashed out at Jie Hui and the others. The three slowed their chase. Unexpectedly, it's a spiritual plant-type demonic beast. Interesting, Jie Hui said with a peculiar smile. Stealthily moving behind Jie Wu and Jia Se, dealing with such a tough-skinned, mindless spiritual plant-type beast would be challenging with his evil Buddha secret technique, so he decided it was better to let the physically adept Jie Wu and the stealthy Jia Se take the lead. Jie Wu unleashed the R-Hit Golden Body secret technique, transforming into a towering giant, with Jie Se activating his protective robe. Fearless, he charged toward the demonic vine. Jie Wu's muscles bulged, and under his golden skin, blue veins writhed like worms. He swung his enormous fist down with the force of thunder, smashing into one of the demonic vines. This punch gathered all his strength, and as his giant fist fell, powerful spiritual energy poured out, creating a massive shockwave that swept in all directions. The demonic vine shattered into countless wooden splinters. As soon as Jie Wu broke one vine, 10 more surged from nearby, wrapping around him. He kept swinging his arms, hammering down like iron hammers. With every attack, another vine was crushed. Jie Se hid behind Jie Wu's sturdy frame, wielding a demon-slaying staff to clear away some of the vines that slipped through. In an instant, nearly half of the vines had been destroyed. Hung Cheng turned to look at Rong Jingyun, who still had not left, anxiety etched on his face. Why are you still here? Are you really going to perish with me? These demonic vines were unique to the Beastmaster's sex spirit grass peak, and Hung Cheng had only recently acquired them. The vines possessed considerable strength, comparable to late-stage second-level demonic beasts, because they lacked souls and intelligence. They fought recklessly, making them particularly difficult to deal with. However, because they lacked intelligence, Hung Cheng had to personally control the demonic vines to attack, unlike other spiritual beasts that could attack on their own, allowing their masters to escape. Rong Jingyun looked at her husband, her eyes filled with affection. We entered this secret realm together as husband and wife, so we must leave together. How could I stand by and watch you sacrifice your life to save me while I survive? Indeed, love is deep and loyal. Since that's the case, you should both stay. Jie Hui's voice suddenly echoed. Unbeknownst to them, he had circled around the vines and approached Hung Cheng closely. Holding a human skin drum in his hand, he gently tapped it. As Hung Cheng focused on controlling the vines while simultaneously talking to his wife, he momentarily let his guard down. His eyes widened in horror, filled with panic. The situation was eerily similar to when Ji Rushue had been controlled by the drum, causing him to feel a profound terror that shattered his focus. Without Hung Cheng's control, the demonic vine's attacks became chaotic, with tendrils even tangling with one another. Jie Wu and Jie Se easily broke through the blockade of vines and charged over. Darling, wake up! Rong Jingyun shouted in panic. At the same time, she hurriedly activated the flame light cauldron, pouring out a large amount of blue spiritual flames toward Jie Hui and the others. Amid Rong Jingyun's cries, Hung Cheng's mind snapped back to reality. His consciousness had just returned from the illusion, only to see a demon-slaying staff piercing through the blue flames, aimed at his chest. Hung Cheng was filled with dread. The demon-slaying staff was now just inches away, and there was no time for him to mobilize his spiritual energy to resist. He could only pour all his strength into forming a spiritual energy shield. However, a late-stage Foundation Establishment practitioner's shield couldn't possibly withstand a full-force strike from a peak Foundation Establishment practitioner. The demon-slaying staff pierced through his chest, passing completely through him. Hung Cheng was propelled backward by the force of the staff, landing near Rong Jingyun. Rong Jingyun caught Hung Cheng and saw a fist-sized hole in his left chest. His entire heart had been shattered thanks to the powerful physical abilities of a Foundation Establishment practitioner. He barely clung to life, lying in Rong Jingyun's arms. Hung Cheng gazed at her face, his eyes filled with reluctance and longing, his mouth opened slightly, wanting to say something. But no words came out. Only a large amount of blood foam spilled from his mouth. Rong Jingyun's face was filled with heartache. She raised her hand, retrieving a purple spiritual mushroom. It was the purple cloud mushroom, a precious third-level spiritual medicine, which had been used by Fang Pengyi during the final stage of Song, Wen's human snake transformation to sustain the last flicker of life. TL. Purple cloud mushroom, previously translated as Ziyun mushroom. Rong Jingyun stuffed the purple cloud mushroom directly into the wound on Hung Cheng's chest. Then, She poured a stream of spiritual energy to help refine the mushroom. Don't speak, just rest. I will definitely take you out of here. Rong Jingyun looked into her husband's eyes, her expression exceptionally resolute. Hang Cheng's eyes rolled back, and he fainted. Rong Jingyun waved her hand, summoning the flame-light cauldron. She placed Hang Cheng's body inside the cauldron. Then, stepping onto her flying sword, she soared into the air, with Hang Cheng no longer a burden. Rong Jingyun's speed increased significantly. Jie Hui and the others were momentarily blocked by the blue spiritual flames. Rong Jingyun quickly widened. The gap between herself and the vast cavern of the 10,000-year spiritual liquid hall, had only one exit, the one they had entered from, ahead of Rong Jingyun. There were several people leading the escape, with Song Wen. Following him was Lei Yuhua. Next were Mu Yunqin and Shui Gu, who were pursuing Lei Yuhua, trying to seize the 10,000-year spiritual liquid in his possession. Finally, there was Feng Qi, who had gained nothing. Rong Jingyun knew that these people ahead were not to be trifled with. She decided not to continue fleeing toward the exit, but instead headed down toward the cliff's edge at the cavern's periphery. The cliff was bottomless, and no one knew where it led or if it would allow them to escape the cave. The practitioners who had entered the cave previously had not brought any relevant information. However, at that moment, Rong Jingyun had no choice but to take the risk. Even if there were no exits down the cliff, all she needed was to find a hidden place to hide. Given the limited range of spiritual perception in the secret realm, it wouldn't be easy for Jie Hui and the others to find her. Chapter 329. Not far ahead of Song Wen, the cave exit was finally in sight. Song Wen glanced back at the people following him. The distance between him and the others was growing ever wider. The urgency in Song Wen's heart relaxed a bit, just as he was about to dash at full speed toward the exit, fully intending to shake off the group behind him in the winding passage. Two shadows flickered in the pitch-black tunnel. Suddenly, two dark sword lights shot out like venomous snakes lying in wait in the darkness. With an unmatched sharpness, they sliced through the darkness, heading straight for Song Wen. Song Wen's expression changed slightly, but he didn't panic. The two flying swords in this surprise attack didn't seem particularly strong. The cultivation levels of the two attackers should be on par with Song Wen, also at the late stage of foundation establishment. This led Song Wen to deduce the identities of the two. They were Feng Qi's subordinates, Lung Tianlu and the masked man Lung Tianlu. Already harbored a grudge against Song Wen, so it was expected he would take action against him. But the masked man's hatred for Song Wen was even greater than Lung Tianlu's, which left Song Wen somewhat confused. As thoughts raced through his mind, Song Wen's actions didn't slow down. He first summoned the turtle snake shield. Behind it was the Kuei water shield, and behind that was a bronze cauldron, fully protecting his body. Although the profound earth treasure pagoda was excellent, it consumed too much spiritual energy. So Song Wen didn't want to use it unless necessary. Song Wen also didn't limit himself to passive defense. He raised his hand and conjured 3 lightning spears, each a yard long. The lightning spears surged forward, racing toward the 2 figures in the tunnel. The 2 flying swords and the 3 lightning spears passed by each other, with the flying swords first striking at Song Wen. The 2 flying swords collided with the turtle snake shield first. The turtle snake shield couldn't withstand the attack. AR was easily knocked away. Then the Kuei water shield was cut through by the 2 flying swords, transforming into a massive Kuei in heavy water. Next, the 2 flying swords struck the bronze cauldron. The bronze cauldron glowed brightly with green light, emitting a deafening hum. The power of the 2 flying swords was exhausted. Returning without success, Song Wen pressed forward with the bronze cauldron. Charging into the tunnel earlier, the 3 lightning spears he shot had already been blocked by Lung Tianlu and the masked man. The 2 once again urged their flying swords to strike at Song Wen. Previously, they had hoped to catch Song Wen off guard and hadn't used their full strength with the flying swords. Now, they had no reservations. With all their might, the flying swords glimmered with sword light, resembling shooting stars cutting through the night sky as they targeted Song Wen. However, as the 2 flying swords charged at him with unstoppable momentum, Song Wen seemed completely unfazed, continuing to press forward with the bronze cauldron, as if he were deliberately crashing into the swords. Just as the flying swords were about to strike the bronze cauldron, Lung Tianlu and the masked man suddenly looked panicked. They were astonished to find that there were actually 6 insects within a 10-foot radius around them. Some came from the ground, some from above, and some from behind. Rushing toward them, these insects emitted a powerful aura, comparable to mid-stage Foundation establishment practitioners. They hadn't even noticed when these insects had appeared. Songwen's earlier 3 lightning spears were merely a distraction. The real killing move was the insects that followed behind the lightning spears. He used the overwhelming power of the lightning spears to mask the presence of the insects, preventing Lung Tianlu and the masked man from detecting them. The insects were too close and moved too quickly. In a panic, Lung Tianlu and the masked man could only hastily condense their spiritual energy into a protective shield to fend off the insects. The sacred goose suddenly grew larger, reaching the size of an egg. Its black, sharp mandibles clamped down on the spiritual energy shield. It was like a high-frequency vibrating knife, continuously gnawing at the sturdy surface of the shield with each bite. The spiritual energy shield emitted slight tremors, as if groaning in pain. The speed of the sacred goose bites was extremely fast. In an instant, it had bitten into the shield. Suddenly, cracks appeared in the spiritual energy shield, and it shattered with looks of horror on their faces. Each of the 2 men had 3 sacred gusts burrow into their bodies in a moment. Both of them ceased to breathe with their deaths. The flying swords that had been aimed at Songwen lost their power, and he easily swept them up, storing them in his storage ring. Songwen then entered the passage with a flick of his fingers. A burst of spiritual energy shot out. The iron mask on the masked man's face was struck off by the spiritual energy. When he saw the face beneath the mask, a surge of killing intent suddenly welled up in Songwen's heart. The masked man was none other than Wang Ming, who was supposed to have received the death penalty 3 years ago. Feng Xinghai had publicly sentenced Wang Ming to death in front of Songwen and Feng Pingyi. Over 3 years had passed, and not only was Wang Ming alive, but he was also vividly present in the secret realm. He even wore an iron mask to conceal his appearance and aura. It was clear that Feng Xinghai had not executed Wang Ming. Instead, he had secretly spared Wang Ming's life, allowing him to work for Feng Qi and assist in exploring the secret realm. Feng Xinghai had deceived everyone in the Beastmaster sect. Songwen believed he couldn't do anything about Feng Xinghai, but since Feng Qi was in the secret realm, he could still take revenge. He released a sacred goo, hiding it in the crevices of the cliff outside the passage. Songwen then cast the soul-binding technique, sealing the souls of the 2 men within their respective corpses. He then stored the 2 bodies in his storage ring. After completing this, Songwen released a few lightning techniques to disperse the residual aura of the sacred gus in the passage. With the overwhelming pressure of the lightning, Songwen used the lightning escape technique and headed deeper into the passage. Amid the intricate and complex passages, he chose only the downward-sloping ones, hoping to delve deeper into the ground. The underground dark river, which nurtured the yin-yang blood-weeping branches, lay deep below. Not long after Songwen left, Lei Yuhua also entered the passage, not pausing for a moment before disappearing into it. Mu Yunxin and Shuigu hovered not far from the entrance of the passage, suspended in mid-air. With Lei Yuhua fleeing into the maze-like passage, there was no chance of catching up. The 2 exchanged glances, shook their heads, and flew back toward the Great Hall. Feng Qi, who had originally followed behind them, saw them change direction and was now coming toward him. Not wanting to clash with the 2, Feng Qi quickly distanced himself. Mu Yunxin and Shuigu had no intention of entangling with Feng Qi either and directly flew toward the Great Hall. This made Feng Qi breathe a sigh of relief. He flew into the exit passage on his sword. Earlier, he had sensed the fluctuations of spiritual energy from the battle between Wang Ming and Lang Tianlu against Songwen from a distance. However, due to the distance, he was unclear about the process and outcome of the battle. After carefully examining the remnants of the battle, Feng Qi concluded that Wang Ming and Lang Tianlu were both dead. Chapter 330. Feng Qi couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. On paper, Wang Ming had already been executed. If Wang Ming's corpse fell into Wu Xing's hands, and if Wu Xing reported to the sect with the body, their faction would be implicated. After all, Wang Ming was sentenced to death because he had disturbed the human-snake balance, which was essential to the first Supreme Elder, Wu Xing. A mere nobody shouldn't pose a threat to them. However, Wu Xing was favored by the first Supreme Elder, and offending him could attract the Elder's attention. That was why, at the 10,000-year spiritual liquid hall, when Wang Ming occupied Song Wen's stone mat, Feng Qi did not intervene. When Wang Ming showed hostility towards Song Wen in front of everyone in the hall, Feng Qi stopped him. Competing for the 10,000-year spiritual liquid was a normal resource dispute, even if it reached the ears of the first Supreme Elder. The Elder wouldn't bother with such trivial matters, but killing Song Wen would truly offend the first Supreme Elder. After all, the first Supreme Elder still had use for Song Wen at the moment. Wu Xing is well hidden. He was able to kill Wang Ming and Leng Tianlu alone, and he's adept at lightning techniques. The cultivation level he displayed at the mid-foundation establishment stage is mostly fake. This person must not be left alive. We need to secretly deal with him before he leaves the secret realm, or it will lead to endless troubles. Feng Qi pondered these thoughts in his heart. Having made up his mind, Feng Qi used his escape technique to head deeper underground. Wu Sheng could kill 2 late foundation establishment cultivators. Such strength wouldn't be disinterested in the yin-yang blood-weeping branches. He would search carefully along the banks of the underground dark river where the branches grew, or exchange information with other cultivators. He was bound to find some clues about Wu Sheng. Just as Feng Qi left, a sacred goo crawled out. It firmly memorized the residual aura left by Feng Qi and followed him closely. Song Wen traveled for dozens of miles, passing through over 10 forks in the path. He discovered a problem. Traveling exclusively downward sloping passages to reach the underground dark river seemed unfeasible. Each passage extended several miles before new forks appeared. Each fork had 2 to several diverging paths. At the previous fork, the passage sloped downward, but at the next fork, the passages ahead were all inclined upward. Strangely enough, some passages that originally sloped downward suddenly shifted to sloping upward. This left Song Wen feeling extremely frustrated, unable to comprehend why the ancient forces that occupied this place built such maze-like passages. No longer choosing paths blindly, Song Wen took out a map of the secret realm and began to study it carefully. This map came from the Beastmaster sect's scripture repository and was drawn based on the memories of various sect members who had entered the secret realm and left. The accuracy of the map was yet to be verified. Song Wen had already discovered several inaccuracies on the map. Unable to think of a way to navigate through the maze of passages, Song Wen decided to wait here, hoping to ambush Feng Qi. He took out the bodies of Wang Ming and Leng Tianlu and performed the soul-searching technique on them from their memories. Song Wen learned that Feng Qi had a more accurate map in his possession. The map in Song Wen's hands was publicly available information within the Beastmaster sect. Many cultivators who participated in the secret realm and exited alive drew maps for their sects but withheld certain information. The truly accurate maps would be sold privately at high prices to some cultivators interested in the Kanglin's secret realm. At the same time, Song Wen understood why Feng Xinghai spared Wang Ming's life. Wang Ming's spirit beast, the spirit-piercing rat, could barely be considered a mouse king as it could control many low-level rat-type demon beasts. In the more than 3 years of hiding his identity, Wang Ming had cultivated a large number of low-level rat-type demon beasts. He used these low-level rat demons to explore the secret realm to cope with the issues of spiritual perception being suppressed within the Kanglin's secret realm. Of course, Wang Ming's cultivation at the late foundation establishment stage was also a powerful asset for Feng Qi in exploring the secret realm. After devouring the souls and blood of the 2 corpses, Song Wen burned their bodies to ashes. The bodies of the Beastmaster sect cultivators could obviously not be taken with him. In fact, Song Wen had no intention of keeping any corpses from the secret realm, not just these 2. After waiting for a quarter of an hour in the passage, Song Wen realized he had not only failed to wait for Feng Qi but also hadn't encountered Lei Yuhua and the others. Song Wen recognized that he must have taken the wrong path. Moreover, the elite cultivators from various factions all possessed more accurate maps. These maps, if not comprehensive, were at least significantly more precise than the publicly available map he had in hand. Song Wen retraced his steps and returned to the cave entrance of the 10,000-year spiritual liquid hall. There was no one at the entrance of the cave, but from deep within, He could faintly sense fluctuations of spiritual energy, suggesting that there were still cultivators lingering in the 10,000-year spiritual liquid hall. Not wanting to complicate matters, he didn't inquire why those people were staying behind. After carefully searching around the entrance, Songwon discovered 3 neatly arranged scratches in a corner of the passage floor. These scratches were very subtle, almost unnoticeable against the mottled ground. If one was not intentionally searching for them, it would be difficult to spot. These scratches were left by the sacred goo to guide Songwon. Finding the scratches calmed Songwon's mind, and he once again ventured deeper into the passage. When he reached the first fork in the path, he found scratches on the side passage. Thus, Songwon followed the traces left by the sacred goo, heading further down into the depths of the underground. He walked through the maze-like passages for an entire day before finally finding his way out. During this time, he had traversed no less than several thousand feet. The vertical distance he covered was also around 300 to 500 feet. At the end of the passage was a wide underground river. The turbulent waters flowed incessantly within the riverbed, producing a rumbling sound that echoed in the quiet underground world. On both banks of the river, a few peculiar ordinary plants grew sporadically. They emitted a faint glow, like tiny stars dotting this dark and mysterious underground world. After spending considerable time, Songwon reached the opposite bank of the river, where he found the traces left by the sacred goo. Following the insect's guidance, Songwon ascended the riverbank, moving upstream. According to the experiences of previous Beastmaster sect members who entered the secret realm, the underground river concealed powerful demon beasts, so flying above the river was inadvisable unless necessary, as it could provoke an attack from the aquatic demons. While flying, Songwon remained vigilant, observing the pile of rocks along the riverbank. The yin-yang blood-weeping branches were rooted among the chaotic stones on the riverbank.